Okay. So what's up, Ariella? How are you?
I'm good, Jamie. How are you doing?
All good. Thanks a million for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I've been a long time fan.
Nice one. It's great to hear people are listening.
Oh, for real.
So like you were saying, how are you finding the teaching over Zoom, and that it's not the same as in person, is it?
I think I like to toot my own horn, kind of like pat myself on the back. I'd like to think I've gotten better at it. It's really about reading the room. And I like to think of half of my job as not only teaching, the other half is entertaining. And so as long as I can keep the kids entertained most of the time, especially through Zoom, where, I mean, it's a TV. I have to keep them coming back every week. What makes them keep coming back to my program, other watching something else? And so I try and keep it exciting as I can, but it's learning to adapt for sure, especially the sparring drills and having to teach patterns the opposite way backwards. It's really teasing my brain where I have to know Taekwondo better than I ever have before. It's testing me as an instructor.
Yeah. I suppose that other thing, you have to know your patterns back to front.
Yes. And it's so different. And it's like now when kids have so much in-depth questions, like I got to look it up the encyclopedia because they're asking really more in-depth questions now because now I have to think of it in reverse. So it's like, okay, no, the left hand goes on the inside, but not above the left shoulder. No, the right. Okay, hold on. Let me go double check because now I don't want to be giving out the wrong information. I want to make sure I'm right. And so it's really caused me to step up my game, if anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just that it's you'd much prefer to be in
It's
person, though.
different.
You'd much prefer to be in person.
Oh, absolutely. It's not the same. I definitely prefer it in person, especially because it's not the same training on my own, having the same energy as someone with me. Especially, you can understand as a black belt in Taekwondo, doing sparring drills is nice. You can shadow box in front of your mirror all day long, but it's not the same thing as hitting pads. It's not the same thing as having to move around someone with that pressure that they apply onto you and that reaction. It's certainly not the same. We're doing, I think, the best we can as martial artists, but we all miss it. We'd be lying if we say we didn't miss it.
Yeah. When do you think it'll be back to, I suppose, somewhat normality, like somewhat
Ah,
normal?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if there's ever going to go back to what we consider normal again, especially because, I mean, look at the size of the Irish World Championships. There was 2,000, 3,000 people there. And I
Yeah.
mean, here in the States, we're still not really comfortable with crowds more than, I would say, 10. And so I think it's going to be maybe a year minimum. I think the ITF is going to keep trying to adapt what they're doing online, like creating e-tournaments with divisions like for patterns and for traditional patterns like prearranged. And eventually we're going to have to find a way for breaking. I think we're all going to have to find a way to adapt. But hopefully, I mean, hope no more than a year of this. Because what about you? How bummed were you about the Slovenia World Cup being canceled?
Yeah, it's kind of that one's hitting more so now, as it's because I haven't been like,
Yeah,
it's feeling like usually, this time of year is when you'd be going to a tournament. Um,
absolutely.
it feels like it's been
Yeah.
so long because it has been so long, I suppose. It's kind of like that even for the European Championships earlier in the year. Like when they were first
Hmm.
cancelled, it was about 6, 7 weeks before they were meant to happen. And
Wow.
I kind of felt like when it was first cancelled, I kind of felt like, look, yeah, whatever, it is what it is. But then
Yeah.
it got to the week we were meant to be there, and it was kind of like, oh shit, I was supposed to be
Yeah.
there. I was supposed to be stuck here.
Exactly.
So
At least you're not alone in feeling that. I think everyone around the world is feeling that right now.
yeah, yeah, it's
And it's like it's I would have competed in a mask. I think from now on, like everyone's gonna have to get their temperature taken at weigh-ins, things like that. I think they're going to be I think weigh-ins are going to take a lot longer now, longer than they used to, because you have to minimize the amount of people that are allowed in the gym. Or it's going to make it more efficient on the other hand, because now people are going to have to show up on time. So when they say, if you're supposed to be there at 10:08, you need to be there at 10:08, otherwise you'll miss your spot.
yeah,
So it could be better, or it can make things more efficient, or it could slow things down a little bit. It's going to take some time. We're going to have to find some space to practice and some running room, but eventually we're going to find a way again to be able to continue as we were. It's just going to take
yeah,
some time, but I'm hopeful.
yeah, same. But like that, hopefully not too long. Hopefully not too long.
Yeah, for real. Me too. And it's like I'm so used to, from probably 2016, from about the time in Budapest, I've been traveling and training. I would say every other month I'm out of town somewhere at some competition, at some training. And this is the longest I've been home. The last time I was out of town for a Taekwondo event was March. at the Warrior Open in England. That's the last time you were there too, I think.
It was the last time.
And that was the last time. And so it's
That was
crazy for me to be like,
so fun.
wow, this is what it's like to not live out of a suitcase.
Yeah, and
You know what I
just
mean?
before, like I competed on the Saturday. We got back. I went to squad training on Sunday, and by Thursday, the European Championship
Euros was canceled.
was done. So like,
Yep.
I'm actually really happy I got the competition in when I did now, like looking back.
Exactly. I was injured. I injured myself right before the event. And so I was there just to umpire and to help out. But I'm happy that I was able to take part in probably the last ITF event for the year, if not for another year. We'll see if there's going to be events happening in March. I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully.
But we'll see. Yeah. But I was happy to be at the last one. It's like a badge of honor. Like I was there.
Yeah, for sure. But like to take it back, like then, how did you get started in Taekwondo? Where did your journey begin?
I don't want to sound cliche as everybody else's answer, but of course I wanted to be the pink Power Ranger. I wanted to be Kimmy. I used to, this is an embarrassing story. When people used to like ring the doorbell or like knock on the door, I was like so territorial and I was so like brolic to fight that I would kick. I wasn't even in Taekwondo or anything, but I would just like get ready to kick whoever was at the door. Like I just had so much energy and I thought I was this Power Ranger, like I was this badass who was ready. And so my parents were really hesitant to put me in martial arts because they thought that it was just going to inhibit that behavior or enable it. But we moved to Las Vegas from New York City, and I wasn't having a great time making friends. We moved in like the middle of the school year. There was already cliques involved. And so we joined the local YMCA. And I remember watching the Taekwondo practice from like above where the weight room was. And I was just like in love. My parents kept walking around doing the tour and I was just fixated on what they were doing. And luckily I was ITF Taekwondo and I've just been in love with it ever since. I've been doing this since I was 9.
Yeah, cool. Could it have been any other martial art, do you think? Was it just look, it was Taekwondo, if it was karate, if it was kickboxing, if it was judo, if it was...
It was something about the leg work and the knee control and really just the way we do our patterns. It just looks nice. It's pleasing to the eye. I think that maybe I'm a little bit biased because I've been in this for so long. I think we are one of the premier martial arts that demonstrate not only the martial violence side that Taekwondo can be, but also the art where it's supposed to be beautiful. It's supposed to be eye-catching. It's an art for a reason. And I just don't think other arts can sorry, I'm losing my track of the words. I don't think that it can encapsulate all the beauty that ITF Taekwondo can bring through the use of our sine wave. So I don't think it could have just been anything. I just think that it was just kind of like destiny that I fell into Taekwondo and Taekwondo kind of fell into my life.
Yeah. I suppose like the patterns sometimes it can nearly match more so what you see in something like the Power Rangers, you know.
Yeah, exactly. The choreography, exactly.
Yeah. Like the sparring doesn't actually look anything like you would see.
No, not at all. And especially back in 1999, I mean, it was just people going crazy. I don't think we wore headgear. I think our class mouth guards were optional, to be honest. So it's definitely evolved and cleaned up over time to become more sports rather than like what we see in the UFC.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would have fallen in love with something as quickly as I did Taekwondo if it would have been something like Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai. Not that to knock them, I think they're beautiful arts in their own right. It's just something about our style of maybe it's the continuous sparring, the way we do our patterns. It's just, I don't know. I rock with it. I rock with the vibe of it all.
Yeah. And did you do any other sports when you were growing up, or was it just Taekwondo?
I dabbled in a lot of things. I did soccer, American soccer. I did basketball for a long time, trying to follow in my brother's footsteps. But really, I always wanted to be in martial arts. Like before I was even in anything, I would be making up kicks. Like I know that's a front kick. They call this a roundhouse. I learned that's a jab. So I would be doing things like in front of my mirror, just practicing martial arts and just no organization, not knowing really what the hell I'm doing. But I just thought it was fun. And I thought it felt empowering. And I really liked that feeling of feeling empowered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once my parents, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, sorry.
Once my parents were comfortable enough putting me in Taekwondo, I was actually like the worst behaved student. You would think like I would just be so grateful to be there and I would just be, that ultra like moto student, and I wasn't. I didn't like the authority placed over me. I didn't want to wear the fancy pajamas. I certainly didn't like that my belt was white. In my head, I'm like, no, I'm at least a blue belt. I'm at least halfway to black belt in my head. And so really, like, Taekwondo has humbled me so much, where I don't know what kind of person I would be if I didn't have that to kind of like kick me in the ass and be like, no, sweetie, that's not how it's going to work. And so I actually failed my first test, my first yellow tag test, because I wouldn't listen. They would say like, okay, let's practice our Korean terminology with, Anjo, Mukmyeon, which is kneel and meditate. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to spar. I hated patterns, despised them, because I thought this was all supposed to be just kicking and punching. I thought it was more just like kickboxing and not the art. It wasn't until I had the right influences in my life to show me the parallels of how life imitates art, and how I can use that to make my patterns better, and how my patterns make my sparring better, and my sparring make my patterns better. And it really is this 360, where my parents were lucky that they signed me up with the right people. Where it's just, if there's a God, he put them right in my life, so I would be able to walk on this right path through Taekwondo. If anything, like, this is what I think that people that look for salvation, whether it be in religion or community service, I found mine through Taekwondo and martial arts. I found my true love through this. And I know it's corny and as cheesy as it sounds, that's like the best way I found to describe it, is I'm lucky that I found my soulmate when I was 9.
Yeah. And did you get into fights? It didn't make you more violent? They did, like, your parents were
no, it made me so much more afraid to fight, because I was getting my ass kicked in class all the time because I wasn't listening. And so it knocked me down a few pegs, where I'm like, all right, I need to, if I'm going to have this big mouth of mine, as I know is going to get me in trouble, I need to be able to back it up. And so it wasn't probably a good 3 or 4 years of ass kicking that I'm like, all right, I really need to smarten up, because I'm getting tired of these, black eyes and bloody noses and broken fingers. I broke 5 fingers in Taekwondo before I learned how to close my damn hands, because I'm like, no, I'm going to spar my way because it's faster this way. And this is when we had those, like, the polyurethane gloves where the fingers would stick out on the sides. Do you remember those? Yeah, broke 5 fingers in Taekwondo because I was stubborn. And so if anything, Taekwondo has really just been like a big meal of humble pie at some points in my life, which is what I needed.
Yeah. I've heard of toes many times, but not many broken fingers.
Oh, that's just because I'm a dumbass. That's because I needed to learn 5 times that I don't like this feeling. And I've never done it since. Thank goodness that the gloves have evolved since then. Because I think most of us, I don't think any of us in the big Maifis or top 10 gloves that we're used to today, maybe some people really do fight with their hands completely closed, but I think most of us still fight with it open because we just feel a little bit looser that way. And so I've learned to close my hands, and now just out of habit, I prefer to do like my drills with my hands closed, just because if I ever need to fight without them, I know my hands are going to be closed, because I don't like the feeling of broken fingers anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And did you start competing straight away? Was competition something you got into right away?
Yes, because my school at the time drove competition. We were a competitive school. That was kind of the culture there, was you're either doing this for competition, and this is like a way of life, it's a lifestyle, or you're really just doing it to look good on college applications. It was really like 2 groups. And I was so young at the time, I'm not going to college that young. And so I definitely drifted more towards the competition side. And my first competition I was a green tag. It was in San Diego, California. And it was actually the 1999. Yeah, so it was the same year that I had just started. And I got first place in patterns, and I got second place in sparring. And I remember being really upset about second place in sparring. That's what I remember walking away with, was that I was upset, like that was close, because it went into like overtime, because it was the 1 round apiece. Then we tied, and then we went into the overtime round, and then that tied, and then it was the sudden point, and she got me, and I didn't understand like what that meant. So I was like, oh, okay, she got me, let's just keep going. And I was like, no, that's it. And I'm like, what the fuck? I hate this. And so from then on, like, I always I'm not as good at point fighting as I should be, just because I've never trained for it. But that was my first taste of continuous sparring, really. And I learned that I didn't like that feeling of losing.
Yeah. Well, look, your first experience of competition was much better than mine.
Exactly. Yeah, was it? What was yours?
For patterns, I was a white belt for the patterns. I did the first half of 4 actual punch, Sajid Druggy.
Okay.
I didn't know there was a second half. We'd only ever really practiced the
Oh
first half.
no.
So I did the first half, and I lost obviously. And then the sparring, I think I've told the story a couple of times. I was sitting next to this guy, and
Mhm.
he was telling me, he goes, "I hate sparring," and I goes, "Oh yeah, yeah." He goes, "I have never won a spar in my life."
Oh no.
I think that like he was like we were 8 and we were white belts. Like how many? I think he had like 2 matches and he lost both or something. But whatever. He said, "I've never won a spar in
Okay.
my life." So I was sitting there thinking, "All right, I want to spar this guy." So and sure enough, we did spar. It was
Uh-oh.
and he won. So
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, see, and I remember that the coaching style was so much different at the time because we could get away with a lot more then. And so the style of sparring kind of matched the style of the coaching, where it was just back then, it was just intense side kick, side kick, side kick, pressure, 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 get him, get him, get him. And so it's just so different now, where now it's a game of chess, where you go, I react, you react. And the style is so much different, where you need to be a fast thinker now. And I think that we breed that now with the younger generation than with kind of they've been doing it for a long time, where we're just bred to a certain way of just let's go, let's go, let's go, where that's not necessarily working in this style of sparring these days. So it's interesting to see how these new styles come and go in waves, if
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, definitely. I think even like I look there, when I look at some of the white, sorry, the yellow belts that we have, like even
Mm-hmm.
they're definitely way more
Oh,
switched. Definitely way more switched
I
on than I
know.
as a yellow
I'm
belt.
so lucky that I'm not a color belt now. I would never get my start in Taekwondo because it was, I was getting my ass kicked in sparring so much that I was like, all right, I got to find a way to be good at something in this. And so I just really fell in love with the beauty of what the patterns look like. But for the long time, I always thought, I feel like I'm good at this, but I don't feel like I am as good as I could possibly be. And I always wanted to be in this ITF. I didn't get into this ITF till late in the game, till like 2016. And I had always wanted to be in it, but I never really had my foot in the door. I never really had a way in until Master Cody Springfield, who teaches down in San Diego in California. He opened up his school, and then I joined with him. And it was really just like the unlocking of everything in my life. I thought like, oh, this is what it was meant to be like. And I think, what would have happened if I had those opportunities when I was a colored belt?
Yeah,
How different it would be now to be able to go straight into the ITF, because I bounced around from organization to organization for a few times, just always trying to find my fit, because I never had a way into this group until Master Springfield. And that was when I was able to get in. But up until that point, it was just, how do I get in? Like, I'm watching this group and I'm like, this is how patterns are supposed to look like. Like, I've been told it should be like this, it should be like this. But I've never seen anyone be able to actually do it until I watch practitioners in this group that are just amazing, like Master Suska, Mark Trotter, Sylvia Farragut, Isabel Bond, like all these incredible competitors, especially in patterns. They were like the pillars of like, this is what it's meant to be like. And so once I came into this organization, I was like, wow, I'm starstruck. What am I doing here? I'm not good enough to be here. And so I hope that kids that are bred in this organization now are growing up with these pillars thinking, I can be just like that. What's separating me from them other than hard work?
yeah, yeah.
So
And
just
what?
because it's a different generation, I hope they don't think that it's impossible. It's still very possible.
Mm. And what were your experiences like in the other ITFs? Would you have competed at their world championships and that like?
I have. I don't necessarily want to sound like I'm talking shit about any other organization necessarily, so I won't name names, but I found this one to be the most efficient by far.
Okay.
And there's a level of professionalism within this one, and they really try and go with the encyclopedia as much as possible. Like, if I'm not Grandmaster Morano, I can't quote the exact page numbers, but somewhere within the thick encyclopedia, I'm not even sure what volume it is because I'm not a good fourth degree. I can't tell you what exact volume and page number and all that. But I know it says that there's supposed to be like an elevated stage and there's supposed to be a podium, which are things that like at this other world championship they didn't have. So it really just felt like any other regional tournament that I kind of spent money, my time, my training away from my family to go to. And it just felt like any other kind of regional event. And I felt really let down by it. And then I watched the World Cup. I remember I was on the naval base in San Diego at the time, and I was watching the World Cup online. And I was watching the 4 through 6 degree men's matches. and it was master. Now he's a master, Stephen LeGros. He's based out of San Jose, California. And I was watching him perform patterns, and he's a much different body type than me. I'm only, we don't use a metric system. I'm only 5'2", and I'm 105 pounds. I'm like 45 kilograms. And he's a much bigger guy, but he does patterns so gracefully and so beautifully. And I'm thinking, why the fuck don't I move like that? Like this, like it doesn't make sense that this guy who you would think is against his body type to be able to move so beautifully, but I'm smaller in stature and I like to think I'm graceful, but I don't look like that. And so that was that turning point for me where I was like, I have to get my foot in the right doors to be able to learn from the best possible, not even to compete, but I thought I knew what Taekwondo was supposed to look like. And then I watched the World Cup in Brighton, and then my world just like opened up, like, this is what ITF is meant to be.
Yeah. So then did you just kind of spend between 2012 and 2016 kind of looking for a way to get away?
Yeah, I would say between 2012 and I would say I started training heavily right at the beginning of 2015. And I started training specifically for the ITF World Championships in 2017. So 2015 is really when I started putting on like the gas pedal for everything, when I started training with Master Cody Springfield down in San Diego. And I was training probably 5 to 6 times a week, but that was nothing compared to in 2017 when I went into the whole training camp, where that was 2-a-day trainings of patterns and stretching and movement drills just to keep everything fresh. But I started, back in 2015, just for the World Championships. I gave myself 2 years to prepare, just because I knew I had to adapt my patterns so much. I knew I was okay at patterns, I was decent, but there was just so much I had to change. And so I wanted to give myself enough hard work and preparation time to be able to give myself the final result. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself. I even chose not to go to the World Championships in Italy just because I felt that I wasn't ready, that I was going to get too starstruck and too stuck in my own head and too nervous, which is exactly what happened to me in Budapest in 2016 at my first international event in this ITF.
Okay. And how did you get on there?
I was a 3rd degree at the time. I walk in, and as soon as I walk in, like it just happened to be dumb luck that I see Katia Solovey and Master Solovey just kind of like cross paths, and I'm like, oh, holy shit, like this is like the Academy Awards, like these are celebrities in my eyes, like this is the A-list, I'm here, like I'm a fraud, I'm an imposter, what am I doing here, I'm not good enough to be here. I just had all this crazy self-doubt, and it's because I was watching other competitors warm up, and I was worried about everyone else, and I wasn't worried about me. And then I went up in my first round, and someone had told me that the person I was going up against was a former junior medalist. They were from Canada, and they had won like a year previously. And I was like, well, that's great. That's great for my team. Awesome. So I go up there and I perform Kwanghae, and then I won 5-0. And all of a sudden my emotions went from like really shaky to good luck, everybody else. You are all here for 2nd place. Like I got so full of myself and just so egocentric that the next round they called for, what do they call for? They called for Changjang, and I started doing Jungun, and I completely went through like half of the pattern, and then realized all the judges are looking at me confused, and I'm like, I just completely messed this up. Like I came all the way down here, I sacrificed all this time. I only get one pattern, which is what, 2.5 minutes at most, to impress the judges, to have them in my zone, and I just blew it. And then, because some of the judges then got confused of, oh wait, which pattern is it? They started voting for me, which then caused the computers to mess up. So we get to stand there at just our resting position for about like 15 minutes. So I get to sit in self-shame as my coach is just like, let's get ready for sparring. Like, there goes that one, like on to the next, like no reason to be negative about it, but there's no way not to. You're sitting there for 10 minutes until they dismiss you, just for them to raise the other hand. Like we know she won. Can I just go cry in silence and in peace now, please? And so that was like that was my first experience at a first international event within this organization. And then the very next year at the World Championships in Ireland, I won my first World Championships. And it was because I had completely changed my focus to not just getting physically prepared. I felt I had done that well enough, but I could tell like that was an experience. Like my mental preparation was nowhere near where I needed it to be able to prepare for this caliber to be able to feel comfortable with myself and happy with myself, that I was accepted there and meant to be there, that this wasn't like this imposter syndrome. And so that was like a big transformation in my life, going from I'm a competitor, train your body. But I had never put stock into how are you training your mind.
Yeah. What were the main things that you did? Was there anything kind of stand out that you did, like that in terms of like training, like mental exercises or
I had moved
anything like that?
I had moved from San Diego to Northern California, to Berkeley at the time. And then I was going to train with Master Stephen LeGros. And I was really excited to go and train with him because I knew he was a world medalist and he had trained world champions before. And so I thought that we were going to have this similar way of like, oh, it's going to be hard work, it's going to be Taekwondo all the time, go hard or stay the hell home kind of attitude. And he came with this whole, like, the first thing he would ask me every time I got in the door is, how are you today? Not like, hey, how's it going? But like, no, I genuinely need to know, how is your mindset? So I know how best to work with you today. And I learned, like, it's okay to be frustrated today. It's okay to be sad today. And to work with those emotions is to learn to regulate those emotions, essentially. And so he really just helped me find the calmness and the beauty within the patterns, essentially. Because I had this habit of turning very like quickly and intensely between my patterns, but that's not very beautiful in a way to move between the techniques. And so he really helped calm my mind down in between the patterns. So it reflected the beauty of the patterns. If I'm stuck and anxious in my head, then my patterns will look rigid and anxious and not as beautiful as if I'm relaxed. And so he really tried to help emphasize the relaxation and the beauty in life. Like, he really introduced Tai Chi patterns to me, which is a tactic from Grandmaster Lan, which is something I train all of the time. That's an essential part of my training camps for patterns. Is I have to set aside time, probably an hour and a half a day, 4 times a week, just for Tai Chi style patterns, so I can learn how to chain everything together at the exact right moment. When should everything twist? Where should my sine wave be? Where is my breath control? Because for the longest time, I had focused so much on putting everything into my patterns, all my power, all my speed, all my breath. But no one, and this is by no fault of anyone but mine, I suppose, no one ever told me to breathe in. You would think like I would know how to breathe as an adult, but I was just constantly. And so I'm finishing my patterns thinking, fuck, I'm so out of shape. I'm so out of breath. Like, how am I ever going to be able to go to Worlds if I'm out of breath all the time after I just do Chunji and Donggun? But then I realized if I breathe in between the techniques, it allows my body to relax, because you can't breathe in very rigidly. It's not natural. You breathe in, relax. So that should reflect in the relaxation of the pattern in between the techniques. And so that was really, I think, the training. It wasn't so much a physical training as much as it was a mental adaptation of a different way to think during the patterns. And I think that really set me apart, and Tai Chi style patterns was essential to that.
Okay, interesting. And do you think, how did you kind of deal with the whole idea of when you got to the Worlds in Ireland and seeing the Sullivanes or seeing other people like that? Was that just something like I've like, you just, it wasn't
it was nice to be prepared for it.
Time?
It was my first time, so it was really nice to be prepared for it from Budapest. But in that experience, I always just try and do better than my last international event. So I was telling myself, if I can just make it past 2 rounds, just 2 rounds, I'm thrilled. I don't even care about medaling necessarily. I just want to prove to myself that I'm not going to choke, that I can make it past 2 rounds. That's all I need. And so I think what separated me from everybody else was everybody was worried about beating each other. Well, I'm just so focused on beating myself. And so what changed, and I know you've mentioned this with another guest, I can't think of the name in a previous podcast, where if you're watching your competition warm up, like or even watching their matches, it can throw you off, because you're now losing precious time that you have to prime your mind and your body. I mean, did you work all the time to just fuck off and go watch somebody else's match for 5 minutes? Because that's 5 minutes you could be using to just even mentally prepare, meditate, listen to good music that will get you into it. But that really changed my mindset. was in 2017, which I'm going to throw my headphones on. I'm going to find a corner to myself, and I'm just going to work by myself. Like, I was there for the opening ceremony. I walked in with my team. We sat down, and then I went off to the warm-up area and I worked. In Germany, we went through the opening ceremonies. I sat with my team, and then I went to the warm-up area and I worked. So I prefer now to just get in my own space. Don't worry about who else is there. I know they're going to be there. I know it's going to be amazing, and I can deal with the shock and awe after I compete. Luckily, I'm always on the first day because I do patterns. And so I get the rest of the week to just chill and talk and socialize. But it's that first day I've learned, like, I have to be here for me. And I've learned, like, it's okay to be a little bit spoiled on that day. Like, it's okay to feel a little bit entitled. You know what I mean? I just ask the others in my life to still love me through that time and through that hour that I'm going to need. I'm going to be a little bit bitchy and I'm going to be anxious. And if I need water, I need water. If I need space, I need space. If I want a hug, I want a hug. For that hour, I get to be a princess. And then after that, I'm chill again. That's like the agreement that I've tried to make with myself.
Yeah. But like that, it's not too selfish because everybody gets their turn throughout the week. Everybody gets their turn to be selfish. So it's not too selfish at the same time.
Exactly. And so it's always nice. That's why I think it's always nice to see everybody towards the end of the day, because it's a totally different energy. If you notice, not only at the beginning of the event itself, but then towards the end, but every beginning of the day and every end of the day has a totally different energy.
Yeah.
And so I'm lucky that I compete at the beginning of the day. So I get all the nerves and all the anxiety out at the beginning, because I hate having to compete at the end, where if you're sitting there all day, you cool up, you warm down, you cool up, you warm down. Oh, now they're going to lunch. So I love competing at the beginning of the day. I love to get it over with. I love competing at the beginning of the week. It's just, I've learned to find the correct times to fangirl out, pretty much. I've learned when to keep control of when, okay, this time is for me. I'm allowed to be selfish. I'm allowed to just say, you know, they're great, they're incredible, but right now I have to focus on me. They have people fanning out on them all the time. I'll get to them later. So that's what I've learned, is to be a little bit selfish in that regard.
Yeah. I think eventually you just get used to being around those people anyway.
Yeah, that helps too. It does help, especially because over time they'll be like, oh, that's Ariella. I remember you from this. And I'm like, you know my name? Like, that's incredible. I never thought that I would be at this level where, like, people that I have looked up to for so long are liking my Instagram posts. Like, it's crazy to me. I still fangirl out about it at home. You should see me. Like, online I play it cool, but at home I'm freaking out. It's a trip.
Yeah, I think here in Europe we have the benefit because, you know, we have like so many, I suppose, people who will be well known in the sport. Like you see them at least once a year anyway, because you're the European Championships. But maybe
if not every, like, 2 times a year, the European Championships, the World Cup, the World Championships. There's so much going on within Europe. I'm so jealous about that.
Yeah, you can always, there's always the next one. You see, that's the thing. Like with us, it's over here.
Exactly.
There's always the next big one.
And that's why I feel I was so lucky to be able to take part in the last, like, big European event, which is the Warrior Open. Shout out to Tim Cool and Master De Silva. So I feel really lucky and happy to be able to take part in that. And I mean, maybe you can tell me what it's like in Europe, because necessarily here it's not really under control. And so I think that the European circuit is going to start the competition scene again far faster than the Americans will. And so do you think that it's going to be happening again soon? Do you think there's going to be another competition season soon?
I don't know.
Really? Uh-oh.
Like, well, you see, like I think, as far as I understand it, and it's kind of the case somewhat here, is like cases have definitely started going up.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't as many deaths as there would have been with this many cases before. So it's hard to know. But like, obviously, if things, I don't know, are deaths maybe going to start catching up. But then, like, there's the whole thing with Ireland. Like, there's only like a green list. There's only so many countries you can go to where you don't have to quarantine.
Okay, interesting.
So like that could itself cause a problem, because like certain countries might be able to fly to the countries where these tournaments are on without having to quarantine for 2 weeks. And I think it's going to be a bit complicated, I think. So
absolutely. And it's just like, of course, it's perfect timing. I don't necessarily want to count my chickens before they hatch, but I got a job offer in England to go down there and teach, and I'm starting the visa process to be able to start that. And it's perfect timing where I'm going down there to really start like my big Taekwondo competitive career, and now there's no competition. So it's just kismet. It's just perfect timing. And so hopefully by the time I get down there, there'll be some form of something worked out, even if it's just more online tournaments. But I'd be happy just to get in a room with black belts again, to be honest. Like I've been training on my own since March, and it's very lonely. I train boxing with Master De Silva on the weekends. I train with Queen's Taekwondo Center throughout the week as well. But it's great online. This is an amazing alternative, and we're so lucky and fortunate to be able to have the technology to do this. I don't know how this would have affected us 10 years ago, before the advent of FaceTime and Zoom, but it's not the same as being able to be in groups of people all working to make each other better. It's not the same as a team.
Yeah. So when do you think you're going to make the move? Is it going to be much longer before you get to move to England?
As soon as England will have me. I know I'll have to go through a quarantine process, but that doesn't matter to me because I get jet lagged anyway. So I'll use that 2 weeks to catch up on sleep. But I'm hoping sometime shortly after the new year, between January and March is what I'm hoping.
Yeah, nice.
So we'll see. Right now, it's just about the visa process. That's what we're waiting on. Oh, and I want to make sure I can get my dog down there too, my English bulldog.
Now you made sure there were English ones.
Yes, of course. Of course. I got to be able to fit in. That's it. His name is Spanky. He's amazing. He's a big fat meatball.
And has there ever been a time where like, have you ever found have you had to balance a job or anything like that, or college with training? Have you found that to be a problem at any point in time?
Yes, 100%, especially here in America, because our student loan business, because that's what it is outrageous. So I'm incredibly fortunate where I have had opportunities to be able to work and go to school and train, but not necessarily all at the same time. I found it really hard to balance it. And if anybody has any ideas to help me, that'd be great, because right now I'm enrolled in school again. And so I don't want to take out student loans, because then that would hinder me from ability to be able to, let's say, move to Europe if I wanted to. They do credit checks. If I have bad credit and I have massive debt, they're not going to let me go, because it looks like I'm derelict in payments or I'm just in massive debt. So I've been paying for school completely out of pocket since high school. It's taken me longer to get my degree, but at the same time, I'm not weighed down by massive debt. So it's a complicated process, but right now I'm in a really fortunate position where I sold my house a few years ago, and I've made the right investments, where I've been able to work part-time jobs here and there, but mostly just focus on my training. So I've been working on my degree in communication because I would like a career in that one day. But right now I'm not willing to take out the student loans to make that happen faster, especially with the elections coming up. We don't know how the interest rates are going to fluctuate. So yeah. I don't think right now is the time for me to be doing that. So I've been paying for school completely out of pocket. So it's a balancing act to be able to say, okay, now I got to take at least 4 months off of school, which sucks. But at the same time, I'll be able to save money because I'm going to pick up a job. And then that job is going to help me be able to go to Taekwondo events. And the Taekwondo events is going to be my vacations from my school and my work. So it's really this balancing act that you have to learn which parts of you can take, like self-control of the car, and which times you can't. When the competitor is allowed to drive, when the student's allowed to drive, when the adult and the worker has to drive. It's a balancing act, I've learned. And if one part of that person is driving the whole time, you're going to get burnt out. So it has to be an act. It has to be balanced.
Yeah. It's kind of, I suppose everybody has the same, don't they? When Taekwondo's not, when you're not funded, it is that balance.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult. I don't know how it is in other countries like Ireland or some of the bigger countries like Russia or Argentina. I don't know if they get funding. I don't believe that they do. But unfortunately, with being a lesser known martial art, no, it falls on the competitor's shoulders 100% of the time, not only for the cost of the competitions, but the transportation to the competitions, the transportation to the training equipment, the authorized training equipment, the cost of the rental of the gym. It's a lot. And it's a balancing act to be able to have the mental fortitude to keep up with it, especially have family time as well. Yeah. It's not easy.
Yeah. And so when you got to Dublin, and you said you're just happy getting past, you just want to win 2 rounds. So was it a bit of a shock when you found yourself in the final and winning in the final as well?
Yes, because I never expected to get there. I had expected to get past 2 rounds. That was my goal. And I'm telling myself I'm going to meet my goal. But then I kept going past and past and past. And so it just became this feeling of like, I'm in love with this moment. Like, I got this like energy from, especially just being on the center stage, this energy from the people in the crowd of like, we're all here doing what we love. Like, there's other places we could all choose to be. Most of us are adults. We can put our money elsewhere and go to other places. Most of us traveled to Ireland for the first time. We don't have to be at City West. We could be in Dublin itself. We could be anywhere. So to have that energy of people are choosing to be there, and we're all doing what we love. And I'm on that center stage, and it's like I got farther than I thought I ever would. I was just so in love with that moment that I was just, it wasn't even like I'm going through the pattern. I'm making, assessments along the way of, okay, I need to adjust my L stances. That needs to be higher. This needs to be in the right placement. It was just, it was like nirvana. And I've never felt anything like that moment of like, this is what they meditate for. This is the form of like, I feel great about myself. I feel great about this energy. I feel the beauty of the movements, but at the same time, I'm feeling dangerous because these are dangerous techniques that we're throwing. And so I think that, like I said earlier, my competition was just so worried about beating me. Well, I was trying to chase this feeling of like, this is nirvana. This is happiness to me. This is nirvana. This is what Taekwondo should feel like. This is what it's about. And I just been really chasing that feeling ever since 2017, because I didn't expect to win. So now it's like, okay, I'm this first time world champion, and now all eyes are on me. And not only am I a first time world champion, I'm the first, as far as I'm aware, I'm the first American to win a world championship in patterns, at least as an adult in the 4th through 6th degree division. And so now it's like all eyes are on me, and I didn't expect this. And so it was a change in my mindset that I had to make, also going now from Ireland into Germany. And then even from Ireland into the 2018 World Cup in Sydney. It was now when I go into the weigh-ins, suddenly, like before, no, I could blend into a room, no one would notice me. Now it's like, oh, there's Ariella. She's the one over there. And it's like, oh, now I'm the one that I was afraid of. Like, I'm the, like, there's Katya Solove, there's Julio Carlos, there's Master Solove, there's all these amazing people. Now it's like, oh, there's Ariella. And I'm like, no, I'm just Ariella. I'm not, it's just me still. So it's weird for me to kind of be seen in that kind of pedestal.
Yeah.
Where I'm not used to that.
Did you feel that affected your performance then?
Somewhat. And it also didn't help that I had a bad draw. I went up against, I don't want to mix up the Lynn sisters. I don't want to be mean. So I went up against one of the Lynn sisters from Norway, and it was just a bad draw. She went on to win the whole damn thing. And she's amazing. She also won the World Cup in Sydney previously to that. And so it was just luck of the draw, where maybe if I had gone up against someone else, I would have been able to go farther. I also think it just comes down to luck of the draw, and maybe there needs to be a seeding system, because I think for the first round, you had the world champ at the time, who was myself, and you had the World Cup champ at the time, who was Miss Lynn, going up against each other first round. And I think there was a similar situation in one of the sparring divisions where it was Julio Carlos, Timothy Bose, and Matthias from Argentina, where all three of them were like within the first 2 rounds of each other. So it's like all the best matches are at the very beginning, where this may pay to have a seeding system. And I don't know if they have that in WACO. That's not really a major power influence here in the States yet. And so I'm not too familiar with how WACO works. Do they have a seeding system within their brackets?
I'm not totally sure. Like, I know they do have rankings. They do have a WACO rankings.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that seeding actually affects their tournaments. I must actually find out.
Yeah. If I'd be interested, because I knew that there were discussions at the last ITF Congress to possibly introduce it, but again, that's just rumors.
Yeah, like even.
And I think right now, go ahead.
I think even if they didn't have a ranking system, if they just expanded the seeding, because obviously the first and second are seeded at the next tournament, but I think they even seeded the 2 bronze medalists as well. So like you could only
interesting.
To where you could only meet in the semi-final again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense.
So like you'd have, like, if we had the person who won gold and then the person they beat in the semi-final, if they're drawn on the same side of the draw, then one goes to the top, one goes to the bottom, and the same then from the two people from the other side. I think that would maybe work a bit better.
Yeah, I think we could benefit from something like that, just so you don't have like a heavy-sided bracket where you have all of the medalists on one side of the bracket, and then you have a very what's considered light bracket at the other end. Not that necessarily that it's less talented, not at all. It's just you have all the previous medalists on one side where it's not necessarily evened out, where I think it could be more of an even spread and possibly more fair. I'm not on the tournament committee. I don't understand how those work. It sounds too stressful for me. I'll stick to patterns. I'll stick with the easy work. But I gotta ask, who do you have for the fights tonight, Costa or Israel?
I've got Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, me too.
To win. I think he'll win by decision. I don't think he'll knock him out. Maybe a late stoppage, maybe 4 or 5, maybe in the fourth, a late stoppage, but I think a decision is probably more likely. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Do you think that you think it's ever going to go to the ground, or you think Israel's going to stuff every takedown?
I don't think Costa's even going to go for the takedown.
Really? Interesting. No. He was showing off that black belt the other day. You don't think he's going to try and use it?
No. I think he's...
No, not at all?
I don't think
Israel's
so.
chewing his head. He's going to try and make it a phone booth fight? I hope so.
I think he's going to... I think he'd be too... I don't know. I think he'd be a bit... I think he'd be a bit too arrogant. I think he's going to think that he can land one clean strike and blast him out. And I don't think he's going to land any strike. I think
I'm very fortunate living in Las Vegas because we're the fight capital of the world. So I've seen like fighters walking down the street. Like I've seen Roxy Montefari. I've seen her at like Fry's Electronics. And I used to work at this martial arts studio here called, I'm going to mess up the name. It's in Japanese. Ryuko or Ryoko. I'm never exactly sure how to pronounce it. But they try and fancy themselves like the UFC Performance Center out here. But it's not exclusive just for UFC fighters. But we would have UFC fighters come into our studio because we would have world medalists and Olympians in judo and jiu-jitsu. We had boxers. I was the Taekwondo instructor at the time. We had Muay Thai specialists that also taught at various MMA centers throughout the city, like 1070 Jiu-Jitsu and Couture MMA and Syndicate. So we have so many great people that would come through this center. And I actually had the pleasure to meet Paulo Costa, and he is the biggest guy I've ever seen. Like, maybe it's just because I'm small in stature where I just felt like a child. Like, if Shaquille O'Neal is bigger than this, like, it's not by much. Like, that is a big dude at 185. And so I think Israel's going to have to stick to striking and moving in and out techniques, because once I think if he gets his hand around his neck, like, he's a strong dude to get off of you, man. So I think it's going to have to come to just striking. I hope so. I prefer striking fights. I like kickboxing. But I don't mind. I've studied jiu-jitsu a little bit. I've taken classes here and there. I'm not in any way proficient, but I prefer to watch standing fights. But I like it when it goes to the ground. It gets exciting. But we'll see. I hope it's just not what I call like fat manning, where it's just you're holding each other against the cage for 5 minutes, like Usman did to Masvidal, and then he just tap danced on his feet for 25 minutes. What a waste of $60 that was. I was so upset about that.
Yeah. What time is the fights going to be on for you? Normal time?
I think a little bit later for me. They usually start at 5. I think tonight they're starting at 7 for the main fight card. What about you? 3 a.m., 4 a.m.?
3 a.m., yeah.
No, really?
All the time. If I see a 3 a.m. start for a main card and 2 title fights, you just know it's going to be like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's going to be late.
Get to bed. So, yeah.
Damn. I'm a big UFC fan. And so that's going to have to be an adjustment for me when I move. Is I got to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch my favorite fighters. That's going to be an adjustment. I'm very spoiled here that it happens most of the time 15 minutes from my house, either at the Apex, which is 15 minutes from me, or down on the Strip, which is 25 minutes from me. So I'm very lucky to be in the fight capital of the world doing a sport that I'm in love with. Yeah. Who do you got for the Khabib and Gaethje fight?
I think Khabib wins.
Absolutely. 100%.
Khabib will win a decision, I think, as well.
You think it'll go to 5 rounds? I don't
Yeah.
think it'll go to 5 rounds. I think maybe 4.
Yeah. The more I think about it, though, I'm very intrigued to see that fight. I think it's a great fight. But I think it's hard to bet against Khabib, like, because he's
It's the perfect record. He's the perfect MMA fighter.
yeah.
You got Floyd Mayweather, who's the perfect boxer, and you got Khabib, who's the perfect fighter. Perfect record. You can't knock his record. You can't talk shit. So I'm excited for that one. I'm bummed that the Ferguson and the Poirier fight fell through, though. That would have been a great fight card to add on to it.
Yeah, for sure. That would have been. I don't know who I'd pick for that one. I was big on.
I know that one's tough. I would still go with Ferguson, though. Something about he's just ruthless.
I was big on Ferguson.
And his cardio's insane.
I was big on Ferguson for the Gaethje fight. I thought Ferguson would beat Khabib. I thought he was going to beat. I thought he was going to beat Gaethje.
Yeah,
it's up in the air.
The Ferguson and Khabib fight. It's a fight that never was. Like, it's never going to happen. As much as everyone would have loved it, was what, like 7 years in the making, something like that. It's a wet dream. It ain't going to happen. It sucks.
Yeah.
But we'll get through it together.
So, like, in terms of like you said, you sometimes see some fighters around, like is it just fighters knocking around, like, or do they have people coming up to them looking for pictures and things like that, or is it just like a normal thing?
It really depends on the popularity. Like, I have not seen McGregor. I know when he's like in town because all the news outlets go crazy, and like I can recognize, like, oh, that's Red Rock Canyon. That's where I ride my bike too. Or like, oh, that's the smoothie shop that he's at off of Tropicana in the 215. Like, I can recognize like where they are. So it depends on their stardom. Like, the popular, like, crazy stardom ones, like, you're never going to see. But like the more, like, everyday fighters that aren't at that massive stardom yet. Yeah, you see them at like grocery stores and things like that all the time. You do. Absolutely. And it's like, they don't mind, as long as, like, obviously if they look like they're in a rush, then they're in a rush, but they're like everyday people. You know what I mean? If they're busy, they're busy. But if you want to go up and ask them to take a picture, like, most of the time they're really nice and they're happy to get the recognition. And it's crazy because, like, they train at local gyms here. And so you could go to any, and what do they call them? Casualties in the UFC world. Or civilians, sorry. You could be any civilian or something, just not knowing really anything about the UFC or MMA world, and go into what looks like a hole in the wall gym. And you can have UFC professionals there, fighters there, champions there, working out with just like the adult class. And you would never know that they have this level of popularity. Yeah. And so it's really, I think it's like the only sport, professional, if you want to call it a sport, it's really the only professional sport where you can mix and mingle with like your favorite fighters. Like, you can't do that in the NBA. You can't do that in baseball. You can't do that in American football. I don't think you could do that in European football, where you could just like go up and hang out with like your favorite stars, or like, I can go down here and I can talk to like Montefari if I wanted to. I know she trains out of Syndicate MMA or 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, probably both. So I know I can just look that up and I can join the classes, and I know that I could be in the class with her if I work hard enough where they invite me to the adult class where it's a little bit more proficient. But then you get access to this world of martial artists. And I like to think that martial arts is like a universal language where we're all there to make each other better. Yes, it's an individual sport where we all want to succeed individually, but that's not going to happen if you don't help me and be your best in practice. And you're not going to get to your best if I don't give my absolute best to you in practice. And so I like to think that martial art is like one of the few universal languages that we can all speak to be better for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably, it could be maybe good and bad, I suppose. Like, like the fact, like, if you're a professional fighter, like, you'd like to think that everybody has, like, they have their own kind of camp, high level elite camp, that they're only training with, like, elite people training with elite people. Like, it's probably not the best if somebody can walk in off the street maybe and train.
Of course, yeah.
But
and that's why they do separate them, yeah.
But it is kind of cool as well. It's kind of cool as well, though, that there is that access to them, you can meet them.
And like, you just really have to show that you are proficient enough to be able to be in those classes. Like, they're not just going to take some adult who's never thrown a punch in their life and throw you with the professionals. But if you're like you and I, who have been doing martial arts for the better part of their lives, we're going to get invited to the big kids class. You know what I mean? And so it's amazing being able to, I don't want to say have that exclusivity, because we've worked so hard to be able to have that access. but it's a really nice benefit. It's really cool. And to be able to then that they also pick your minds about things too, that they may never have thought of, like lead leg side kicks and the use of UFC, not just to the knee where we would call a pushing kick, but to the body where you see some of the kickboxers like Stephen Wonderboy and Israel use. So it's awesome to be able to see those influences slowly working their way in. And that's because of, you know, people like us, kickboxers, that are giving those influences. It's because of collaboration, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. That's why I would say Adesanya is probably my favorite fighter at the moment for his stand-up.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. He's one of the most proficient strikers I've ever seen. Definitely.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite fighter? If you had to pick a favorite fighter, because I know you ask everybody that, so I'm gonna get the jump on you. If you had to pick a favorite fighter,
If I had to pick one,
any discipline.
Of a favorite fighter of all time, my favorite fighter at the moment would probably be Adesanya. If I had to pick one all time, probably GSP.
Nice, good choice. Damn, that's a good choice.
If I had to pick a boxer, it's Julio Cesar Chavez.
Really? Mine's Lomachenko.
Really? Yeah. Ooh, a modern one. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I gotta. He's on fire right now. I mean, he's amazing. His quick twitch muscles, even after his surgeries, are just on point.
Yeah.
One of the fastest, I think, in the world.
Yeah. I think he's fighting soon, isn't he? I think he's fighting soon.
I think so. Yeah. Pretty soon. And then have you seen that trick he can do with a water bottle in the air? It's crazy. That hand-eye coordination. I try it once and I send it flying across the room. I can't do it. I've tried. I try to do it for the gram. I can't do it.
How many outtakes think you had though?
Oh, I'm still working on it. Probably months worth of outtakes. Yeah. Months of just like me constantly hitting a bottle, like blooper after blooper. I've yet to be able to hit it twice. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I haven't given it a shot. I must have a look. I must give it a shot maybe and see how much practice I need.
That's the new Instagram challenge. Watch. Everybody's going to be doing that now. The Lomachenko Figueroa bottle challenge.
So look, I know you said that you obviously teach Taekwondo in different gyms and stuff. Is there maybe a goal in the pipeline of having your own gym, having your own club, your own school?
I think I'm actually one of the very few instructors or black belts in the world that I'd never want my own school. That is just, I don't know. It's never been appealing to me. I love to train and I love to teach others, but I've never had, I guess, the right mentors in my life for business, because I think it's one thing to be able to teach proficiently and effectively, but it's a completely different matter to be able to run a business. And I've seen some amazing world-class instructors who run their business into the ground because they think that because I simply know how to teach, that those skills or abilities somehow transfer over where I don't see how they translate. So I don't know if it's just that I've never had the right business mentors in my life yet, but I see teaching and I see running a school as two different things. And I just don't have what it takes, I think, to run my own business. And it's not something I'm interested in. I don't know what I do. I don't know what I would do, honestly. Like, it's so hard. How would I get students? How would I market? How would I keep up on my own training? How do I keep the lights on here and at my house? How do I not cut myself a salary? Like, I see instructors around the world really struggle with it. And then once it takes off, I mean, they're great at it because then the people can start appreciating what they're bringing to the table, not just through Taekwondo, but what the values that they can bring to children in terms of discipline and structure. But I think I can instill those values just without starting my own school. So I like working with other people. I wouldn't mind necessarily opening up like a community center, like at a YMCA or a city center or something like that. But opening up my own school, I don't think it's in the cards for me. Too intimidating. I'll stick to world championships.
Not even maybe when the competition is done.
That's the thing. Like, people have asked me before, do I ever, like, when am I going to stop competing? And I'm telling you, I plan on being like that 60-year-old, 75-year-old fourth degree, still trying to do Juche, because and everybody gives me shit for this all the time. I don't want to promote. Like, I'm so happy where I'm at. I think I was due this summer for fifth, but I'm so in love with the art, this competing at high levels, where ain't nobody got time for that, of like the fifth and sixth, the fifth degree patterns, where like, if it's not for my competition, I don't necessarily want to commit the time to it. And I know that's selfish. And I know I have like all of the black belts just like rolling their eyes at me right now. But it's the truth. I don't see myself ever stopping competing unless my body just gives out. And then maybe I'll think about opening up a school or start coaching. But until then, like I love, like I said, I love that feeling that I got when I was just, I'm in love with this feeling of competing right now. Like I'm doing what I love. There's 2,000 people here all watching, doing what they love. Like this is what it should feel like. This in between the patterns, this motion, the beauty of it. I'm chasing that feeling again. And so I can't imagine trying to chase that feeling and chase a buck while trying to get my school successful. I don't think it's like Ronda Rousey. I think one of the reasons that she just fell off was because she had too many feet in the same different camps. So it's like she's spinning too many plates, trying to do too many things at once. I mean, she was trying to act. She was trying to get into wrestling. She's trying to fight. She's doing endorsements and Instagram shit. And so it's like, where is the focus on what got you here? You can change focus. That's life. You can change your, what you need primarily over time. But if you're here to fight, then you have to put all of your focus into that one thing to be successful. I'm not very good at multitasking, so I can't expect to put all of my time and effort into my school and expect my competition to go well. I can't put all of my time and effort into my competition and then expect me to be able to eat at night. So I've always been able to find a way to make a living without Taekwondo as my primary source of income. So I like to try and keep that going as much as I can, as much as it sucks having to pay my way for competitions. I'm working on the sponsorships. I'm working on them.
Yeah, that's they're definitely needed.
What about you? Do you think you're going to open up a school one day?
Yeah, like I was getting pretty close there before before kind of COVID hit, but no, it's like you said, I don't I'm on the fence at the moment whether it's a good time to be trying to start a business.
I understand. Yeah. So, and it's like, that's what I've done before. I've had my own programs in other people's spaces, like at the Ryoku Training Center, where it was just like a massive training space and we had multiple disciplines, but I don't necessarily own the building. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't mind opening up a program, but I don't want to open up my own brick and mortar. Like I have the keys to the business school. I think that's a lot of responsibilities, and I can barely do my personal taxes. I can't imagine trying to do business taxes. So I don't mind doing a program necessarily, but I don't think I could ever run my own school and expect to be successful while trying to do what I love.
Yeah.
I love to teach, but I don't love trying to keep the lights on.
Yeah. And like even at the moment, like that, if you were able to be stable, like I said, like we changed from, we had 10 per pod, 6 per pod to like, I don't know, like in 3 weeks time, are we going to be having, like, could there be no clubs open? You know what I mean? It's
so unpredictable right now.
Like, never mind about like just worrying about getting people in the door. Like you said, like enough people to pay the rent, enough people to, you know, make some money off of it, like, and run a good business, but it's just so unstable. Like just,
it's an unpredictable time that it may not be the, And it's like, you have to know your market too, because maybe in an environment where it's safe to open up again, people are just sick and fucking tired of being in their houses and want to get outside. You know what I mean? Like I've noticed with my virtual academy classes that they were pretty full at the beginning or midway through the summer. And then as their classes started to go on, they're going back to the traditional dojons. And that's great, because that means that one, that it's safe and that they're able to, and two, they miss their friends. They want to be able to see each other. And so it gives hope that one day we'll be able to adapt back to what things were, even if that means having to reserve a spot on the floor through an app an hour ahead of time. But that means you'll be in the class. Just means we have to adapt.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose before we kind of finish up, really, it's my turn to ask you if you had to pick a favorite fighter, who would you pick?
Oh no, I was hoping I could get out of that one. Let's see. Does it have to be one discipline, or can it be multiple?
Fire out a few, and we'll see.
Okay. For boxing, it has to. I mean, it's so hard to argue against Floyd Mayweather with a perfect record, but I just love Lomachenko's style. It's just something about his speed and his ruthlessness. But at the same time, I like that he's a humble guy, and I like that he's, you know, close to his family and he loves dogs. So it's like maybe that's personal bias going into it. So it's a toss-up between Floyd Mayweather and Lomachenko for sure. God, MMA, it's so hard because it changes like every week for me. It changes so much. I really, really like Sugar Show at the moment. I think I think something's up with his leg. I look forward to the rematch because before that he was on fire. I don't think he necessarily had to leave in a stretcher, but I'm not him. I don't know. I really like him. I agree with you. GSP was one of the absolute best. I'm a McGregor fan. I don't love his personal antics. But I think his ability to break down and assess his opponents, to be able to predict what he'll be able to do, because not only does he study the tape so well, he knows his own self so well. I think that's amazing. And at the end of the day, like, I'm always comparing the female fighters to Katya Solova, and I'm thinking, like, Katya could take them. This is nothing for her. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think my ultimate favorite of all time has got to be Katya Solova.
Yeah. To be honest, I'd put her as my favorite fighter as well.
Yeah, would you? Yeah. I hope she's listening. I'm the biggest fan. I'm bowing down. I'm the biggest fan.
I don't know if English is that good.
Yeah. And that's, I'm always comparing like female fighters to her in the UFC, and I'm like, they're gassing out so quick, and it's like, I've seen them, like, they're okay, there's nothing spectacular about them, but then you watch Katya and it's like the way she moves in the ring, it's like she's meant to be there. She's magic. It's just, it's incredible to watch her, and to see like these okay fighters. I think like most of the female fighters are okay, but some of them are just stellar. Like, I will butcher her name, the champion from China. I don't want to mess up her name. She wants to go up against, yes, thank you. I think her and Rosemary Namajunas are two of my favorite female fighters at the moment right now. But again, I think that they would be nothing for Katya. Give Katya 3 months. Give her a good, decent fight camp, and she'll take them. Dana White, get that contract ready.
That'd be, yeah, could be a cool one to see. Even if it was a stand-up.
I'll be a good manager. I'll be a good manager for you.
Yeah, even if it was just a stand-up contest, you know.
Exactly. It would be. It'd be really good to see.
Yeah. But look, I think we'll leave it there. Thanks a million for coming on. Really enjoyed the chat.
All right, thank you. This was awesome. You made it feel like a conversation, not so much as an interview like I was afraid of. I was freaking out at the beginning of this. I forgot it was even going to be like broadcasted. So thank you. Yeah,
that's what we like to do. Just keep it a chat, really, as opposed to me, I suppose, bombard no questions. I think it's much better if it kind of flows.
Yeah, it was really chill. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks a million for coming on. Hopefully, you'll be back, I suppose, in a gym training soon, and not just online. And hopefully, you mightn't be too long. Mightn't be too long getting over.
Yeah, hopefully I'll see you in the new year.
Yeah, hopefully. So take care. All the best.
All right, stay safe, Jamie. I'll see you later. Bye.